I was fired on the 18th hole of a golf course, but it turned out to be the best day of my career. Let me tell you how my boss's biggest mistake became my greatest opportunity. It was 6 a.m. on a Tuesday when I swiped my key card at Morrison & Associates for what I didn't know would be the last time. The office was dead quiet, just the way I liked it. 3 years of getting up before dawn had taught me that the early hours were when real work got done, before the politics and meetings cluttered everything up. I had one mission that morning: perfect the final presentation for Morrison Industries, our biggest client. We're talking about a $5 million annual contract that kept the lights on and the paychecks flowing. But this wasn't just any presentation. This was my presentation. Every graph, every projection, every strategic recommendation came from 3 years of building a relationship with Mr. Harrison, Morrison's CEO. The coffee was still brewing when my phone buzzed. David Thompson, my boss. Kenneth, change of plans. We're taking Harrison golfing today instead of the boardroom presentation. I stared at the message, feeling that familiar knot in my stomach. David never changed plans without a reason, and his reasons were rarely good for anyone but David. But Harrison loved golf, and some of our best deals had been sealed on the back nine, so I typed back, "Sounds good. Oak Hills?" "Yes. 8 a.m. sharp. This is important, Kenneth. Don't be late." I glanced around the empty office, at the presentation materials spread across my desk like battle plans. 3 years of work, 3 years of 14-hour days, and missed family dinners, all leading to this moment. My wife, Linda, had been patient, understanding when I'd come home after the kids were asleep, understanding when I'd miss soccer games and school plays. "It's temporary," I'd always say. "Once we land the Morrison renewal, things will settle down." The irony wasn't lost on me as I packed up my laptop. Here I was, about to close the biggest deal of my career on a golf course instead of a conference room. Maybe David was finally recognizing my value. Maybe this was his way of letting me take the lead where it mattered most. I should have known better. The drive to Oak Hills gave me time to think, and thinking led to remembering. 3 years ago, Harrison had been just another name on a prospect list. Cold calls, unanswered emails, the usual rejection dance that every salesperson knows by heart. But I'd done my homework. I knew Morrison Industries was expanding into the Southeast. I knew they needed a partner who understood regional compliance issues, and I knew their current firm was charging them 40% above market rate for subpar service. The breakthrough came at a Chamber of Commerce event. Harrison was cornered by a group of vendors, all pitching him their services with the subtlety of carnival barkers. I waited. I watched. When he finally broke free and headed for the bar, I approached with something different. A question instead of a pitch. "Mr. Harrison? Kenneth Miller from Morrison & Associates. I've been following your expansion into Georgia, and I'm curious, how are you handling the differences in state tax incentives between your Alabama and Georgia operations?" He'd paused, drink halfway to his lips. "You know about the tax differential. I know Georgia's offering better incentives for manufacturing than Alabama right now, but the compliance requirements are trickier. Most firms don't want to deal with the complexity." That conversation led to coffee. Coffee led to a consultation. The consultation led to a $50,000 pilot project that became a $500,000 contract that became the $5 million relationship we had today. But somewhere along the way, David had started taking credit. It was subtle at first, sitting in on my calls, CCing himself on emails, making sure his name was on every proposal. I'd told myself it was normal boss behavior, that as long as I was getting my commission and bonuses, office politics didn't matter. I was wrong. The first real warning sign came 3 months ago when David hired his son, Michael, fresh out of business school, with zero experience and maximum entitlement. He's going to shadow you on the Morrison account, David had announced. Learn the ropes. Michael had lasted exactly 2 client meetings before Harrison asked me privately, "Kenneth, is that young man going to be taking over our account? Because if so, we need to have a different conversation." I'd assured Harrison that Michael was just learning, that our relationship wouldn't change. But David's message was clear. Start training your replacement. The thing about family businesses, and make no mistake, Morrison & Associates was David's family business despite the corporate structure, is that blood always wins over talent. Always. I'd seen it before at other companies. Watched good people get pushed aside to make room for less qualified relatives. I'd always told myself I was too valuable for that to happen to me. Pride, they say, comes before the fall. I pulled into Oak Hills at 7:45, 15 minutes early as always. The morning sun was burning off the dew, and the course stretched out like a green carpet under a cloudless sky. It should have been peaceful, but something felt wrong. Maybe it was the way David's car was already in the parking lot, or maybe it was the fact that he'd arrived early for anything in his life. Harrison's black Mercedes pulled up exactly at 8 a.m., punctual as always, dressed in crisp khakis and a polo that probably cost more than most people's monthly car payment. He greeted me with the same warm handshake and genuine smile that had made our relationship so successful. "Kenneth, beautiful morning for golf. How's Linda and the kids?" "They're great, Mr. Harrison. Sarah just made honor roll, and Tommy's starting Little League this weekend." "Outstanding. You'll have to bring them by the office sometime. I'd love to meet them." This was vintage Harrison. Remember personal details, ask about family, make genuine connections. It's why his company was successful, and it's why our partnership worked. We understood that business was about relationships, not just transactions. David emerged from the clubhouse, golf bag slung over his shoulder, wearing a forced smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Gentlemen, ready for a great round?" The first few holes went normally. We talked about Harrison's expansion plans, the upcoming quarterly numbers, industry trends. David was unusually quiet, letting Harrison and me carry the conversation. By the 5th hole, I started to relax. Maybe this was just golf after all. That's when Harrison dropped the first hint. "You know, Kenneth, I've been thinking about our partnership structure. 3 years is a good run, but I'm wondering if we might need to consider some changes moving forward." I felt my stomach drop, but kept my voice steady. "What kind of changes, Mr. Harrison?" "Well, you know how these things go. Companies evolve, relationships mature. Sometimes what worked in the past needs adjustment for the future." David perked up like a dog hearing a treat bag. "That's exactly what we wanted to discuss today, Harrison. Kenneth and I have been talking about transitioning some responsibilities, bringing in fresh perspectives." I hadn't been talking about anything of the sort, but I kept my mouth shut. This was clearly orchestrated, and I was starting to understand my role in the performance. We played the next 10 holes in increasing tension. David kept steering conversations toward new directions and fresh energy, while I tried to maintain professionalism and keep Harrison engaged. But I could see something shifting in Harrison's demeanor. He was watching us more carefully, asking fewer questions, responding with non-committal nods. By the 15th hole, I knew this wasn't going to end well. Harrison was lining up his putt when David made his move. You know, Harrison, I've been meaning to talk to you about Kenneth's compensation. He's become quite expensive for us, especially with the market tightening up. We're looking at some restructuring that might affect our pricing going forward. Harrison missed the putt by 6 inches. He stood up slowly, studying David's face. Expensive how? Well, his commission structure, benefits, the whole package. It's gotten out of hand, honestly. We're bringing in Michael, my son, to handle more of the day-to-day relationship management. Fresh perspective, lower overhead, better margins for everyone. I wanted to speak up, to defend myself, to point out that my expensive compensation was based on the millions in revenue I'd generated. But something in Harrison's expression stopped me. He wasn't looking at David anymore. He was looking at me, and there was something calculating in his gaze. I see, Harrison said quietly. And what does Kenneth think about this restructuring? David answered before I could. Kenneth's a team player. He understands business realities. Sometimes you have to make tough decisions for the good of the company. We walked to the 16th tee in silence. The tension was thick enough to cut with a sand wedge. Harrison teed up his ball, took a practice swing, then stopped. David, can I ask you something? In your opinion, what's been the key to our successful partnership these past 3 years? David's chest puffed up. Well, I'd say it's been our firm's strategic approach, our understanding of your industry, our ability to deliver results consistently. Interesting? Harrison hit his drive straight down the fairway. And Kenneth's role in that success? Kenneth's been adequate, a good soldier, you might say. But sometimes good soldiers need to step aside for the next generation. I bit my tongue so hard, I tasted blood. We finished 16 and 17 in near silence. David was trying to make small talk, but Harrison had gone quiet, responding with minimal nods and sounds. I could see David getting nervous, probably wondering if his plan was backfiring. As we approached the 18th tee, David's phone rang. He answered it, walking a few steps away for privacy. Harrison used the opportunity to step closer to me. Kenneth, I have to ask, is this restructuring something you support? I looked at this man who had trusted me with his business for 3 years, who had invited me to his daughter's wedding, who had become more than just a client. I could lie, play along with David's script, try to salvage whatever scraps of the relationship might remain, or I could tell the truth. Mr. Harrison, I found out about this restructuring the same time you did, this morning. He nodded slowly. That's what I thought. David finished his call and rejoined us, all smiles and forced energy. Sorry about that, gentlemen. Where were we? The 18th hole, Harrison said, where we finished things. The 18th at Oak Hills is a par 4, 420 yards with a slight dogleg right, water hazard on the left, bunkers protecting the green. It's a hole that rewards precision over power, strategy over aggression. It requires patience and careful planning. David teed off first, pulling his drive into the rough. Nervous energy, trying too hard. Harrison went next, landing his ball perfectly in the center of the fairway. Then it was my turn. I stood over the ball, thinking about everything that had led to this moment. 3 years of building relationships, of earning trust, of proving my value every single day. 3 years of sacrificing family time and personal interests for the good of the company. 3 years of making David look good, of letting him take credit, of being the good soldier he'd called me. I took a deep breath and swung. The ball sailed straight and true, landing 10 yards past Harrison's, right in the sweet spot of the fairway. As we walked toward our balls, David kept up his nervous chatter. "Beautiful day, isn't it? Perfect for golf. Perfect for new beginnings, you might say." Harrison was walking next to me, silent but alert. I could feel him gathering himself for something, like a general preparing for battle. David hit his second shot first, a decent recovery that landed on the front edge of the green. Harrison hit next, a beautiful approach that stopped 6 feet from the pin. Then it was my turn again. I selected a 9-iron, took my stance, and hit the shot of my life. The ball arced high and soft, landing 3 feet from the hole. "Nice shot, Kenneth," Harrison said, and there was something in his voice that hadn't been there all morning. Respect, decision, finality. We walked onto the green together, the three of us, but I could sense that the dynamic had shifted completely. David was still talking, still pushing his agenda, but Harrison wasn't listening anymore. He was watching me. David lined up his putt, a tricky 20-footer with a slight break. As he took his practice strokes, he kept talking. "You know, Harrison, I really think this transition is going to be great for everyone. Fresh energy, new ideas, better economics. Kenneth's been a good soldier, but sometimes good soldiers need to step aside for the next generation. He's gotten quite expensive for us, honestly." Harrison's putter was in his hands, but he wasn't looking at his ball. He was looking at David with an expression I'd never seen before. Cold, calculating, final. "Expensive?" Harrison repeated slowly. "Exactly. Sometimes you have to make tough decisions for the good of the company. I'm sure you understand, being in business yourself." David finished his putt, missing by 2 inches. He walked over to tap in, still talking. "The thing is, Kenneth's compensation has gotten out of hand. Commission, benefits, the whole package. We're bringing in Michael to handle more of the relationship management. Lower overhead, better margins for everyone." Harrison lined up his putt, 6 feet for birdie. He took his time, reading the green, testing the speed. Then he stood up and looked at David. "David, I have to tell you something." "Of course, Harrison. What's on your mind?" "You're absolutely right about Kenneth being expensive." My heart sank. This was it. 3 years down the drain, my career imploding in front of my biggest client. I started calculating how long our savings would last, how quickly I could find another job, how I was going to explain this to Linda. Harrison lined up his putt again, then stopped and looked directly at me. "Kenneth, you are expensive. You're expensive because you're worth every penny. You've saved my company more money in 3 years than most consultants generate in a decade. You've anticipated problems before they became crises, identified opportunities before our competitors saw them, and delivered results that exceeded every expectation." He turned back to David, and his voice got very quiet. "The question isn't whether Kenneth is expensive, David. The question is why you think that's a bad thing." David's face went pale. "Well, I mean, in today's economy, we have to be mindful of costs." "In today's economy," Harrison interrupted, "you have to be mindful of value. And Kenneth Miller is the most valuable asset your firm has." Harrison lined up his putt one more time. The green was dead silent, except for the distant sound of other golfers and the whisper of wind through the trees. He pulled the putter back smoothly and struck the ball. It rolled straight and true, tracking toward the hole like it was guided by GPS. For a moment, everything hung in the balance. The ball, my career, 3 years of work. The ball dropped into the cup with a satisfying clink. Harrison walked over and picked up his ball, then looked at both of us. David, I need to tell you something else. This conversation we've been having about Kenneth being too expensive? It's exactly the kind of thinking that tells me you don't understand the value of what you have. David's mouth opened and closed like a fish. Harrison, I think there might be some misunderstanding. No misunderstanding at all. You've made your position very clear. Kenneth is too expensive for your firm. Harrison walked over to me, extending his hand. I shook it, confused, but sensing that something important was happening. Kenneth, my company will pay your expensive salary, along with a 30% raise in equity participation. The deal has always been with you, not with your firm. The world went very quiet. I could hear my heart pounding, could feel David's shock radiating like heat. Harrison kept talking, his voice calm and matter-of-fact. I've been waiting for this conversation for 6 months, actually, waiting to see if David would recognize what he had or if he'd do exactly what he just did. Congratulations, David. You just fired the only reason I was doing business with your firm? David found his voice. Wait, you can't just... We have contracts, legal obligations. Read the fine print, David. Our contract specifies that Kenneth Miller is the lead account manager. No Kenneth, no contract. It's that simple. Harrison turned back to me. Kenneth, I'd like to offer you the position of Director of Client Relations at Morrison Industries. Starting salary of $200,000, plus bonuses tied to company performance, plus 2% equity that vests over 4 years. You'll have your own team, your own budget, and the autonomy to build the department the way you think it should be built. I stood there, golf club in my hand, trying to process what had just happened. 5 minutes ago, I was unemployed. Now I was being offered the job of my dreams by the client I thought I'd just lost. Mr. Harrison, I don't know what to say. Say yes, Kenneth. Say yes, and let's go change the way business consulting really works. I looked at David, who was standing there like he'd been struck by lightning. 3 years of taking credit for my work. 3 years of treating me like a replaceable cog. And it had all led to this moment. The moment when he learned exactly how valuable the expensive employee really was. Yes, I said. I accept. Harrison smiled. The first genuine smile he'd shown all morning. Excellent, David. Thank you for making this so easy. Kenneth, welcome to Morrison Industries. I think this is the beginning of a beautiful partnership. As we walked off the 18th green, I could hear David's phone ringing. It would ring a lot over the next few hours as word spread through the industry about what had happened on the back nine at Oak Hills, as his other clients started asking questions about their account management, as his partners started asking how he'd managed to lose their biggest client in a single golf game. But that wasn't my problem anymore. For the first time in 3 years, someone else's bad decisions weren't my responsibility to fix. I was free. I was valued. And I was about to find out just how expensive I could really be. The drive back from Oak Hills felt surreal. Harrison had given me his business card, not that I needed it after 3 years, and told me to call him first thing Monday morning to discuss start dates and logistics. David had left the golf course without a word, his face the color of copy paper, fumbling with his phone as he stumbled toward his car. I sat in my Honda Civic in the parking lot for 10 minutes after they'd both driven away, trying to process what had just happened. An hour ago, I was Kenneth Miller, senior account manager at Morrison & Associates, worried about job security and family finances. Now, I was Kenneth Miller, soon-to-be director of client relations at Morrison Industries, with a salary that would change everything for my family. My phone buzzed. Linda. "Hey, honey, how did the golf meeting go?" I took a deep breath. "Linda, I need to tell you something. I got fired today." Silence. Then, "Kenneth, what happened? What did you do?" "I didn't do anything wrong." "But that's not the whole story. The client hired me. Same day. Better position, better money, better everything." Another silence, longer this time. "Kenneth Miller, you better not be joking with me." "I'm not joking. David tried to throw me under the bus in front of Harrison, and it backfired spectacularly. Harrison offered me a job on the spot. Director level, 200,000 base salary." I heard her sharp intake of breath. We'd been living on $85,000 for the past 3 years, scraping by on my commission checks, putting off home repairs, and family vacations because money was always tight. "Are you serious?" "Dead serious. I'll explain everything when I get home." "But Linda, we did it. We actually did it." The drive home gave me time to think about what this meant. No more working for David. No more watching him take credit for my relationships. No more wondering if this would be the month my commission got restructured again. No more lying awake at night worried about the mortgage payment. But as the initial euphoria wore off, reality started setting in. I was about to work directly for my biggest client. The dynamic would be completely different. The pressure would be intense. And somewhere across town, David was probably having the worst day of his professional life. When I walked through the front door, Linda was waiting in the kitchen with Sarah and Tommy. She'd clearly told them something big had happened because they both looked at me with wide, expectant eyes. "Daddy," Sarah said, "Mommy said you got a new job." I knelt down to her level. "I did, sweetheart. Daddy's going to work for Mr. Harrison now. Remember I told you about him? The nice man whose company I help?" Tommy, who was 7 and practical like his mother, asked the important question. "Does it pay more money?" Linda laughed. "Tommy, you don't ask about money." "It's okay," I said, scooping him up. "Yes, buddy, it pays more money. A lot more money." Sarah clapped her hands. "Does that mean we can go to Disney World?" I looked at Linda over Sarah's head. For the first time in 3 years, the answer wasn't maybe next year or we'll see. The answer was yes. We could go to Disney World. We could do a lot of things we'd been putting off. "We'll talk about Disney World," Linda said diplomatically. "Right now, I want to hear everything that happened." I told them the whole story over dinner, the edited version for the kids, who just needed to know that Daddy's old boss wasn't very nice, and Daddy's client liked him enough to give him a better job. Later, after we'd put the kids to bed, I gave Linda the full details. "So, David actually said you were too expensive right in front of Harrison." "Worse. He said I'd gotten out of hand, that they needed to bring in Michael to lower overhead and improve margins. Like I was some kind of liability instead of the guy who built that relationship from nothing." Linda shook her head. 3 years of you making him look good, and he throws you away like that? Corporate politics. David never saw me as valuable, just expensive. Harrison saw the difference. My phone started ringing around 8 p.m. The first call was from Sarah, my former colleague at Morrison and Associates. Kenneth, what the hell happened today? David came back from golf looking like he'd seen a ghost, locked himself in his office, and has been on the phone ever since. Half the office thinks he's having a nervous breakdown. I gave her the condensed version. By the time I finished, she was laughing. Oh my God, Kenneth, he actually fired you in front of Harrison? David's not just incompetent, he's spectacularly incompetent. How's the mood in the office? Panic. Pure panic. Everyone knows Harrison was our biggest client, and everyone knows you were the only reason he stayed with us. David's been calling an emergency partner meeting for tomorrow morning. The second call came an hour later. Robert Chen, one of the junior partners at Morrison and Associates. Kenneth, I'm going to cut right to the chase. David told us what happened today, and frankly, we're in crisis mode. Harrison represented 35% of our annual revenue. Without that contract, I know what it means, Robert. Is there any chance you could convince Harrison to keep the contract with us? Maybe you could manage it from Morrison Industries as a consultant or something. I almost laughed. Robert, Harrison made it very clear. The contract was with me, not with the firm. That's why he hired me. I understand. But Kenneth, we're talking about people's jobs here. The support staff, the junior associates. They didn't do anything wrong. That hit harder than I expected. I'd worked with these people for 3 years. They were friends, not just colleagues. But this wasn't my fault, and it wasn't my responsibility to fix David's mistakes. Robert, I'm sorry. I really am. But this situation isn't my doing. If David hadn't tried to fire me, none of this would have happened. The third call was the one I'd been expecting. David himself calling at 10:30 p.m., probably after several drinks based on the slight slur in his voice. Kenneth, we need to talk. I don't think we do, David. Please, just please. Can we meet somewhere? Coffee tomorrow morning? I'll explain everything. Apologize. Whatever you need. But we have to figure this out. I looked at Linda, who was listening from the couch. She shrugged, leaving the decision to me. One coffee, David, but I'm not changing my mind about anything. Thank you. Starbucks on 5th Street? 7 a.m.? Fine. But David, if you think you're going to guilt me into giving up this opportunity, you're wasting both our time. I understand. I need to explain some things. Saturday morning came with a knot in my stomach. I didn't want to see David, didn't want to hear his explanations or excuses. But curiosity got the better of me. After 3 years of working for the man, I wanted to understand what had driven him to such a spectacularly bad decision. David was already there when I arrived, sitting in a corner booth with a large black coffee and the haggard look of someone who hadn't slept. He'd aged about 5 years in the past 24 hours. Kenneth, thank you for coming. I sat down across from him with my own coffee. You have 30 minutes, David. I'm taking Sarah to her soccer game at 9. Right to the point. I respect that. He took a sip of coffee, gathering himself. I owe you an explanation. You owe me a lot more than that, but an explanation is a start. The firm is in trouble, Kenneth. Has been for 6 months. We lost the Hartwell account in January, Precision Industries in March. Our revenue is down 40% from last year. This was news to me. Why didn't you tell anyone? Because I was trying to fix it. The other partners were pressuring me to cut costs, restructure compensation, maybe even lay people off. The Harrison contract was the only thing keeping us afloat. So you decided to sabotage it? David winced. I thought, God, this sounds so stupid now. I thought if I could transition the relationship to Michael, slowly over time, we could reduce our costs and still keep Harrison happy. Fresh blood, lower overhead, better margins. And you thought Harrison wouldn't notice that you were replacing me with your inexperienced son? I thought I could make it work. Michael's smart, Kenneth. Maybe not as experienced as you, but smart. And Harrison seemed to like him in the meetings. I stared at David, trying to understand the logic. David, Harrison tolerated Michael because he was being polite. Did you not see how uncomfortable those meetings were? I saw what I wanted to see, I guess. David rubbed his face with both hands. The pressure from the partners, the financial stress, watching everything I'd built falling apart. I made a desperate decision. You made a selfish decision. You threw me under the bus to save money and advance your son's career. You're right. You're absolutely right. And I'm sorry. But Kenneth, can we find a way to fix this? The firm won't survive without Harrison's contract. 23 people work there. Good people with families and mortgages, and kids in college. There it was. The guilt trip I'd been expecting. Make it about the innocent people who would suffer, not about David's bad leadership and worse judgment. David, those 23 people aren't my responsibility. They're yours. You're the managing partner. You made the decisions that got the firm into this position. I know, but no buts. You want to know what really gets me? It's not just that you tried to fire me. It's that you did it in the most humiliating way possible. You could have had a private conversation, worked out a transition plan, maybe even negotiated a consulting arrangement. Instead, you ambushed me in front of my biggest client, treated me like dead weight, and assumed Harrison would just go along with it. David's shoulders sagged. I panicked. The partners were meeting Monday to discuss major cuts. I thought if I could present them with a solution that involved sacrificing me. Yes. And I was wrong. Completely, catastrophically wrong. We sat in silence for a moment. The morning coffee crowd was starting to filter in. Families heading to weekend activities, couples reading newspapers, normal people living normal lives. None of them were dealing with the aftermath of career-destroying decisions made on golf courses. David, can I ask you something? Of course. In 3 years of working together, did you ever actually value what I brought to the firm? Or was I always just an expensive line item to you? He considered the question for a long time. Too long. I think I took you for granted, he finally said. You made it look easy, Kenneth. The client relationships, the problem solving, the revenue generation. You made it look so easy that I forgot how hard it actually was. And now? Now I realize that some things that look easy are actually impossible. At least, impossible for most people. I finished my coffee and checked my watch. Sarah's game started in an hour, and I didn't want to be late. Not today. Not when I finally had a reason to be optimistic about our family's future. David, I'm sorry about the firm. I really am. But this isn't my fault, and it's not my responsibility to fix. You made a choice yesterday, and choices have consequences. I understand. But Kenneth, if there's ever anything I can do to make this right, there is something you can do. His eyes lit up with hope. Name it. Learn from this. Treat your next valuable employee better than you treated me. Recognize talent when you have it. Compensate it fairly, and don't throw it away to save a few dollars. I stood up to leave, then paused. And David, Michael is a good kid. Don't put him in positions he's not ready for just because he's your son. He deserves better than that, and so do your clients. The drive to Sarah's soccer game gave me time to decompress. The conversation with David had been necessary but draining. Part of me felt sorry for him. Watching everything you've built crumble because of one catastrophically bad decision had to be devastating. But a larger part of me felt vindicated. For 3 years, I'd wondered if I was really as valuable as I thought I was. Yesterday had answered that question definitively. Sarah played beautifully that morning, scoring 2 goals and assisting on another. After the game, she ran over to me, grass-stained and grinning. "Did you see my goals, Daddy?" "I saw everything, sweetheart. You were amazing. Coach says if I keep practicing, I might make the select team next year." "Well, with your new job, Daddy might be able to afford select team fees," Linda said, joining us on the sideline. It was such a small thing, youth soccer fees, but it represented something bigger. For 3 years, we'd been making choices based on financial limitations. Sarah couldn't do select soccer because of the cost. Tommy couldn't take piano lessons. We couldn't take family vacations or fix the leaky roof or replace Linda's aging car. Now, suddenly, those limitations were gone. Not because we'd won the lottery or inherited money, but because someone finally recognized my value and was willing to pay for it. My phone buzzed with a text from Harrison. "Kenneth, I hope you're enjoying your weekend. Looking forward to our conversation Monday morning. This is going to be fun." That evening, after the kids were in bed, Linda and I sat on the back porch with glasses of wine, talking about the future. "So, what happens now?" she asked. "Monday morning, I call Harrison, and we discuss start dates, logistics, probably meet with their HR department. I'm guessing I could start as early as next week if I wanted to. Do you want to?" I thought about it. Yes, I'm ready to move on. Ready to work for someone who appreciates what I bring to the table. What about giving David 2 weeks' notice? David fired me, remember? Pretty sure that voids any obligation to give notice. Linda laughed. Fair point. So, Director of Client Relations. That sounds important. It is important. Harrison wants to expand their consulting relationships beyond what they have now. I'll be building the department from scratch, hiring my own team, developing new service offerings. It's exactly the kind of opportunity I've been wanting. And the salary changes everything. The kids can do activities, we can fix the house, maybe even look at moving to a better school district. For the first time in years, money won't be the limiting factor in our decisions. We sat in comfortable silence, watching the sunset and thinking about possibilities. After 3 years of financial stress and career uncertainty, it felt strange to be optimistic about the future. "Kenneth, can I tell you something?" "Of course. I'm proud of you. I'm proud. Not forgetting the new job, though that's wonderful. I'm proud of how you handled the whole situation. You could have lost your temper with David, could have said things you'd regret later, but you stayed professional, even when he was being awful. I was tempted to tell him exactly what I thought of him, but you didn't, and that's why Harrison respects you. That's why this worked out the way it did." Monday morning arrived with unusual energy. Instead of my normal routine, coffee, quick breakfast, drive to Morrison & Associates, I was calling Harrison at 8 a.m. sharp to discuss the next chapter of my career. "Kenneth, I've been looking forward to this conversation. How was your weekend? Good, Mr. Harrison. Spent time with family, processed everything that happened Friday. I'm ready to move forward. Excellent. I've already talked to our HR director and our legal team about bringing you on board. We can have an offer letter ready by Wednesday if you're interested. I'm very interested. Good. Now, let's talk about timing. I know this is all happening quickly, but how soon could you start? We have some client situations that could really benefit from your expertise. I thought about it. Normally, professional courtesy would dictate giving David 2 weeks' notice. But David had fired me, and Morrison and Associates was no longer my problem. I could start next Monday if that works for you. Perfect. Kenneth, I want you to know how excited we are about this. I've been thinking about expanding our client services division for 2 years, but I needed the right person to lead it. Friday's golf game convinced me that you're that person. I appreciate the confidence, Mr. Harrison. I won't let you down. I know you won't. Oh, and Kenneth? Call me Thomas. We're colleagues now. After I hung up, I sat in my kitchen for a few minutes, drinking coffee and thinking about how quickly life can change. A week ago, I was worried about job security and commission cuts. Today, I was planning the next phase of my career with unlimited potential. My phone rang. Sarah from Morrison and Associates. Kenneth, I have news. David called an emergency meeting this morning. 3 more clients terminated their contracts over the weekend. Word is spreading about what happened with Harrison, and apparently, other clients are questioning whether they want to work with a firm that would fire their lead account manager. This was worse than I'd expected. How bad is it? Bad. David's talking about closing the firm. The partners are furious. Robert Chen is already updating his LinkedIn profile. What about the staff? Most of them are already looking for new jobs. Everyone knows this ship is sinking fast. I felt a pang of sympathy for my former colleagues, but I also felt validated. This wasn't just about Harrison's contract. This was about a fundamental loss of confidence in David's leadership and judgment. Sarah, if you need a reference or a recommendation, you know you can count on me. Thanks, Kenneth, and congratulations, by the way. If anyone deserved this opportunity, it's you. The rest of the week passed in a blur of paperwork, phone calls, and preparation. Harrison, Thomas, had arranged for me to meet with key members of his team, tour the facilities, and start understanding the scope of my new role. Morrison Industries was everything Morrison and Associates wasn't. Modern offices, state-of-the-art technology, a culture that valued innovation and excellence. Most importantly, it was a place where good work was recognized and rewarded, not taken for granted. On Friday afternoon, exactly 1 week after the golf game that changed everything, I was sitting in my new office, an actual office with a window and a door, and a nameplate that read Kenneth Miller, Director of Client Relations, when Thomas knocked on my door. Kenneth, how's your first week going? It's been incredible, Thomas. I'm still getting used to having resources and support staff and a budget that isn't questioned every time I want to spend money on client development. Well, get used to it. We believe in investing in success here. He sat down across from my desk. I wanted to talk to you about something. I've been getting calls from other firms in town asking about you. Word is spreading about what happened last Friday. What kind of calls? Job offers, mostly. Apparently, there are several companies that would like to hire the man who Harrison Morrison stole from David Thompson. I laughed. I'm not going anywhere, Thomas. I'm exactly where I want to be. I know that, and you know that. But I want to make sure everyone else knows it too. He reached into his jacket and pulled out an envelope. This is your official offer letter, with one addition we discussed, but didn't formalize. I opened the envelope and read through the terms. Everything was as we'd discussed, plus one new line. Upon successful completion of first-year performance goals, employee will receive additional 1% equity stake in consideration for vice president title. Thomas, this is more than generous. Kenneth, David Thompson made the mistake of treating you like a cost center. I don't make that kind of mistake. You're an investment, and I want to make sure you know how much we value that investment. As I drove home that evening, I couldn't help but think about the chain of events that had led to this moment. David's panic about firm finances, his decision to sacrifice me to save money, his catastrophic misreading of Harrison's priorities, one bad decision leading to another, until the whole structure collapsed. But for every door that had closed for David, a bigger door had opened for me. Sometimes, the best thing that can happen to your career is working for someone who doesn't appreciate you. It forces you to find someone who does. I pulled into my driveway just as Sarah and Tommy were getting off the school bus. They ran over to my car, excited to tell me about their days. For the first time in 3 years, I had time to listen to every detail, because I wasn't stressed about work or money or whether my boss was going to undermine me tomorrow. Daddy, Sarah said as we walked toward the house, are you happy at your new job? Very happy, sweetheart. Good. You smile more now. That evening, Linda and I sat on the same back porch where we'd talked about possibilities just a week earlier. But now, the possibilities were becoming realities. Sarah was signed up for select soccer. Tommy was starting piano lessons. We'd scheduled contractors to fix the roof, and were looking at houses in better school districts. You know what the best part is? Linda said. What's that? You get to prove that David was wrong. Not just about firing you, but about your value. You get to show everyone exactly how good you are when you're working for someone who appreciates it. She was right. For 3 years, I'd been constrained by David's limitations, his lack of vision, his inability to see potential. Now I was free to show what I could really do. My phone buzzed with one final text message. Kenneth, I wanted you to know that Morrison and Associates officially closed today. I'm sorry it ended this way. I hope your new position works out well for you. David. I showed the message to Linda. She read it and shook her head. Do you feel bad for him? I thought about it. I feel bad that it had to end that way. But David made his choices, and this is the consequence. Maybe he'll learn from it. And if he doesn't? That's not my problem anymore. We sat in comfortable silence, watching the stars come out and thinking about the future. Somewhere across town, David was probably having the worst week of his professional life, but that wasn't my concern anymore. For the first time in 3 years, my biggest worry wasn't whether my boss appreciated me. It was deciding which opportunities to pursue first in a job that valued my contributions and rewarded my success. It's funny how quickly too expensive can become exactly what we need. The only difference was finding the right person to make that evaluation. And sometimes, the right person finds you on the 18th hole of a golf course when you least expect it and most need it.